I don't get to act. I don't get to get up there and go, things are great, and put the smile on and try to do this thing so that people feel good. Like, no, people wanted to genuinely know what I was going through.
Yep.
And it's still the case. That's always my argument for 12 steps. It may not be where you stay, but it's a worthy endeavor to get in there.
Welcome to the Fearless Happiness Podcast, where we showcase phenomenal individuals who have overcome serious traumas, life obstacles, and challenges to find their own path to fearless happiness. Listen as Max Naist invites guests from all around the world to share their experiences and spread strength, hope, and faith. This is the Fearless Happiness Podcast, and this is Max Naist.
All right, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. And, I'm biased, but yes, today we have a really amazing guest who's going to share his story with us today. And I guess being fellow recovery guy, right? Like, of course I'm going to be biased, but like all my guests, he's very special. So, Jason, what I like to do is have you introduce yourself to my audience, who you are, what it is you do, and then you and I are going to rock and roll.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, Max. It's one of the beautiful things about recovery is the people that I continue to get introduced to. So it's good to finally get a face to face with you. My name's Jason LaChance. Boy, I've been in recovery. I just hit 4 years of continual sobriety. I have a little under 8 years of total recovery time, and currently work at Pain Parents and Addicts in Need. Media director there, do our podcast, social media outreach, all that fun stuff. And I do some one-on-one coaching with people, although not frequently. I'm more of a I'm kind of like you find me, okay, I'll work with you under certain circumstances. Yeah, and I'm just passionate about really just human development, growth, and just helping, I guess, my world and the world be a little bit better off. So I don't know what else to throw in there.
No, that's perfect, right? Because like you and I know in our recovery world that there's that saying, right? We got to give it away to keep it. And
Yeah.
right, most of us, 99.9% of us, love giving back in some form or fashion to help somebody, especially with our stories of like the challenges we went through, our addiction, right?
Yeah.
So go back, Jason, and tell us where it all started. Like, tell us your story and how it happened. Tell us, as deep as you want to go, and then we'll keep going from there.
I'll give it the best Cliff Notes version I got here, Max. Look, we can go all the way probably back to like great grandparents if we wanted. It's just a lineage of addiction in my family. Everything, I mean, you pick the substance, money, sex, love. I can trace them all. I know enough about my lineage to see that. But I grew up in a home of addiction. My father had a very, very, very tough childhood. Any kind of abuse under the sun, you name it, I won't get into it. Beyond inappropriate in every way. Living on his own by the time he was 14. Luckily, he'd been around truck driving all of his life, so developed a skill set. Well, when he met my mom, very charming young man at about 17, my mom was 20, and they got married at a very young age. My grandma literally had to sign the marriage certificate for my dad to get married. Um, and my dad held it together for quite a long time, built a very successful business, but eventually, as you know, and others out there know, once this brain comes to maturation around that 25, 26 years old, those things we suppress come to the surface, and they did for my dad in the form of addiction. Wasn't so much alcohol at the time, unfortunately, in the industry he was in. Crank was kind of a free flowing thing.
Right.
That's what hooked him. Due to his sexual trauma, he definitely acted out in those areas as well. Pornography was prevalent in my household, and I always say that was the first thing that, looking back, was a hook for me, or a drug. a form of escapism. It's like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on in this household, or boy, the kids at school were mean, or whatever it is. Well, Dad's got Playboy under the little bathroom thing there.
Right.
And we don't think that. I wouldn't have thought that. I was 5, 6 years old, being able to access everything from whatever you want to call it to seeing hardcore stuff. So it definitely all kind of set the stage, so to speak. I had an older brother, who just what seemed great at everything. Still to this day, he is, but I'm proud of him as opposed to jealous. I mean, the girls liked him. He was always cool, and all these different things. So I was a very short kid that all of a sudden sprouted at about 13. So I was picked on quite a bit, and smaller gangly kid. So along with the learning disability, I am dyslexic. So I went to a special class. It was pretty obvious to the other kids. And so it was just all the stage was set there. There's nothing unique about my story. Maybe some of the combinations are a little bit different from other people, but
Right.
it was all there.
You know, I I can relate, right? Like I had not so much jealous at the time, but I had older brothers and sisters, right? When I grew up, as you know, when I would think back as I got sober on the things that, right, you could agree or disagree, right? But I was one of those guys that didn't feel a part of, even in my own family, right? Because I had these older 5 siblings, the nearest one was 10 years older than me, right? And then they went older from there, and they were already starting their families, right? And then there was me and my little brother, and we got along most of the time, but I think he was that guy, right? Because I became the jock, right? I'm going to find my way, as you know. So I got involved in baseball, sports, and he was more of from early age, right? Partier, I'm going to be good at getting high, right? I can remember back when he was in junior high, I was at high school. They called me at the high school. Hey, you got to come pick up your brother. I thought, oh, what's wrong, right? I walk in the office and he's there with the principal. We caught him with pot on him, right? He got caught selling pot to another student, right? But you would think, as growing up and starting to see the red flags, right? So I get him in the car, right? The first thing I ask him, I go, why did you do it at school, right? But you got to join. Let's get high, right? Right? Because I was the one that was the chameleon, right? I fit in with the jocks. I fit in with all this, the heavy metal guys, all this, all the different crowds. And I was the one that was liked by everyone because I played that part. So not knowing, right? You tell me how your experience was, but not knowing that I was setting myself up for big time addiction, right? Because I was like the Mikey guy from the commercial, the life commercial, right? Give it to Max, right? As I would learn in the meetings, right?
Yeah, Max will try it.
Absolutely. Max, hey, Max, he hates everything. Give it to Max. Let him try it, right? Oh, he likes it. Good. So if he likes it, we might as well do it, right? But I would learn later when I got sober, I was the chemical gourmet, right? Just if it did anything to you, I was going to try it, right? How was your experience once you started experimenting with drugs and alcohol?
See, for me, it's I was a late bloomer because I saw it, and it was I saw what it was doing to my mom. That I consciously understood, at 15, 16, 17 years old. Relationship wasn't good with dad for understandable reasons. We're very close now. He's been sober a long time. But I was a late bloomer. It was really, I mean, other than maybe a sip of champagne at a cousin's wedding or something like that, I was a guy that if I did rarely go to a party, I drove the drunk people home. I didn't drink, I remember distinctly a friend of mine, wonderful lady, getting in a fight with her boyfriend. They're both drunk. And it's everybody's like, who can we trust to take a very pretty drunk girl home and make sure she simply gets home? And, oh, Jason. Yeah. And the boyfriend oh, thanks, man. I was a pretty trustworthy guy, and I can relate to what you mean. I got along with everyone, but I wasn't on the list of the guy to call to hang out every weekend either. That kind of evolved. It really started to happen when I was about 21. Bounced around to some different colleges. I was at a bar. My friend's band was setting up. They had a little trouble with one of the amps and said, "Hey, you do acting and all this stuff. Get up on stage, kill some time." And I did. Got a couple laughs. This guy comes up and goes, "Hey, you want to work in radio?" And I just went, "You want to buy me a Jack and Coke?" And he cracked up, and sure enough did. And then I ended up, while I was in college, working in broadcast radio, which, hey, I'm not a young guy, so that was pretty cool at one time. It was still a big deal. And so a very insecure individual, all of a sudden started showing up places, and people knew who I was, and wasn't buying drinks anymore. And girls were saying hi instead of the other way around. And so, as much as I didn't even like drinking, I was very much, right away, like half a beer and I'm yawning and ready to go home. And it quickly evolved because there was something so empty inside of me that was looking for connection and to be filled. And all the insecurities that started from childhood. So at about 21 is when it started to ramp up, and it took about a good 7 years before there was any real consequences to that.
So, well, especially college, right? And working in broadcast radio, right? Like when I remember being younger and listening to all the the guys in my area, like KNAC or KMET, KLOS, right? All the big
Sure.
names. And then you hear stories about a lot of them, like off radio, it's like one big party, right? And like you said, you're 21 now. So, like you're living the rock star lifestyle, let's say, right? Because you're on radio and you're hanging around people. Was that a big
Mm.
influence on your addiction, like being around that?
Yeah, I mean, I can distinctly remember one of my first bosses being like, "Hey, you're late." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I'm not on air for 3 hours." No, 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 we're going to this place, Liquid Lunch. And I'm like, what the hell? What is a liquid lunch? And that's all it was. Like, nobody ate. You just had drinks, and people went back to the office. And I'm like, how do you function like this? Well, later to figure out, I trumped them all, so to speak. And yeah, it very much was it. You would go, back then, record labels and bands were throwing concert tickets your way, and you would go and pick a big band from the early 2000s. I probably met them, or they came through my studio. So it very much was all of a sudden this big ego shift, and not knowing how to manage that, or that there was even anything to manage. I don't remember being mean to people, or mine was probably more the people pleaser side, and then people being like, "Man, I that's my favorite band, why didn't you call me?" And having to deal with that, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, well, Bob, I gotta remember Bob next time, because
Right.
I don't want to let Bob down." As people pleaser from an early age, that was very much my chameleon thing. Well, why I probably fit in with so many people. So it was all snowballing. It was starting. I don't know that anyone would have been able to see it per se, but I was in a group of people that were, college friends, or friends that weren't working, or were working but not in college, that were bartenders or whatever it was.
Right.
It was the norm. It was the norm.
I relate to the people pleaser part, right? I was a big,
Mm.
still sometimes, that's a work in progress, right? Because I don't want to upset people, and I don't like conflict if I don't have to, right? But it's funny, back in my addiction days, like bring it on, right? Like, oh, come on. I don't care, right? Like, because that was part of the addiction for me, was the chaos, right?
Sure.
And but looking back, right, like in high school, like I said, red flags for me. And I'm sure you can relate, but like towards the end, right? Why I joined the Navy was because at the end I'm partying like because my friends were a year or two older, so a lot of them were in college already, right? As I was graduating high school, a lot of them went to like local colleges like UCLA, or even out of state, Arizona State, which is a big party school, right? And you know I was, me and you can relate a lot, right? I was that guy too, right? Like if my friend had a girlfriend that needed to go home, they would go, "Max, are you okay?" First they would say, "Are you okay?" "Yeah." will you take my girl home because she needs to go? She's been drinking way too much, or she needs to get home safely, right? And I was that guy too, right? So I can totally relate with you on that level. But for me, that's like once like I hit certain things like drinking, of course, and then like for me, it was cocaine in high school.
Oh,
Right. You know that feeling like that you hear you talk about in the rooms and stuff. Like I took my first drink and it was like, oh, all my fear went away and all, everything. That was like me and drinking and cocaine, right? And I'm the guy, and my friends will tell you some of them, right? Like they're all ready to go to bed and stop the night. And I'm going from how, like, hey, dude, like it's 3 o'clock in the morning, but the party's just starting. Let's go, right? And but that's a big reason I joined the Navy, to get away from that. But that's another story. But like, right, that influence that you had, right? Like, because I when you mentioned liquid lunch, it was like that at the end of my Navy career, right? Like, or
sure.
the end of my service. All the guys, we'd work on the base and they'd say, okay, lunchtime, we're going to the club over here and we're going to go have lunch. And I'm like, cool, okay, right? And I'm thinking, and just like all I see is pictures coming to the table. There's no food, right? And then part of me is like, all right, cool, right? Like I can do this. So those moments where, right, being the people pleaser, let's say, because I'm going to tell you from my experience, was a big, as I look back now, trouble for me. I should have noticed, right? Because I couldn't say no, right? There was, right, that, come on, we're just getting started. And, like you've probably been through it where like, no, I got school tomorrow or I got work. I need to go home. And then next thing you know, you're watching the sun come up, right, at the person's house or whatever. How is that for you? And, how long did your run last? Let's say, let's get into that. Like once you became addicted and you knew that like you are hooked, how long did that last? And tell the audience what that was like.
Sure. It eventually it did get to that point where it was the feeling that I sought. And as that ramped up more and more, and I did struggle still with pornography too through that. Not understanding again, that was another acceptable thing. I mean, I was interviewing porn stars on my radio show. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. This is just a what. I was just very much subconscious living, not a plan. Just get up, do the next good radio show, get those #1 ratings with men, and all that. And then eventually I moved to where I am now, a small town. I started out in Monterey, California, ended up where I'm at now near Merced, California. And it was even more amplified because there's Max still to this day, there's not much for adults to do that really isn't around the bars and restaurants and the lounges. You know what I'm saying? And it's getting better, thank goodness. And so it was even more amplified, and eventually got into a relationship with a lady that I eventually had my children with, and it was just tumultuous. She was 7.5 years younger. We've got a good relationship now, but there was kind of like our stuff collided enough. And I had yet to understand everything I needed to deal with, and I was projecting so much on her and everybody, and eventually it did come to a head. We had kids, and my kids were little, and I just couldn't break free of it. It was, well, it was the question, well, can't you just have maybe 6 tonight? Oh, sure. And I would lie about the other 12 that were hidden. You know what I'm saying? It was to that point, and I had a brief moment, and the irony was I didn't have, not that anyone should drink and drive, but I didn't have that much for me. Like a beer and a half, it wasn't much, let alone to be able to function. And got in a car, and whatever it was, I went, I know I'm going to go buy more. And when I get home, this is going to go bad again. This is going to go really bad. And I made a very knee-jerk decision, drive my car off the road. I hit a power pole. Luckily, it was a dead line, so there was no electricity going through it. And luckily, nobody was near me, but it flipped my car to the point of when I went to the wreckage yard the next day, the guy goes, I'm so sorry, you have to claim. Who died? And I went, oh, it's me. And he goes, get the F out of here. You're fine. I went, yeah, I know. Like, grace to God. People can't see it, or they're just listening, chills, just thinking about, like, something was looking out for me. And I'd like to say that that was the end point, Max, but it wasn't. I still had
Yeah.
about another year and a half of in and out and going to meetings and giving them a shot, not listening to people that were much wiser and had really destroyed their lives in the grand scheme more than me.
Right.
I was very fortunate. I only broke out in handcuffs a couple of times. But it was very evident my life was going to fall apart. Divorce happened, single dad, my kids were little, and it eventually came to a good crescendo of where I finally made a decision to stop people pleasing. And that was after my slip up just over 4 years ago of our conversation. I say relapse, some people say slip up, because it lasted 4 or 5 hours before I got help again.
Right.
But it became very evident that yeah, I was going to end up dead. And it wasn't going to be by that knee-jerk reaction, choosing as a way out. And yeah, things have continued. It was the only time I've ever really dug into the program and done the work, and it's been worth it. But it was a pretty tough road. I was amazed I never really lost a job. Because of it, somehow I was still able to perform. Did lose some friendships, which a few of those are a good thing, and some of them not so much. Unfortunately, I've been able to make amends with those folks, but the decision was made. Thank you, but you still go over there. And respectfully, I understand.
Right. Yeah. And that's interesting. Like, everybody has that time, or like we like to call bottom, right?
Hmm.
Yours sounds a lot like mine was the last one, right? I only used once. It was a one-time use, but it felt like I had been back out on there doing it all over again. Right.
100%.
Right. So to me, it was a relapse, but I know what you mean, right? Like, some people call it a lapse because you didn't go fully back into what you were doing. But it all made me feel so, like I had been. And so, like, thank God, right? Like, you had like your divine intervention, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want to call it, right? Higher power, God, the universe, right? Buddha, right? Somebody was watching out for you in that car wreck, right? Because to have that person at the tow yard go, "I'm so sorry for your loss," and you tell them, "That was me. I drove that thing." And they're like, "No way," And I've had those moments where I like OD'd, right? Not on meth, right? Like, but like you, that wasn't my bottom. It was like, after I came to, luckily I locked the door. My mom would have had a heart attack, probably walking in with me with a needle sticking in my arm, right?
Sure.
But I remember calling my friend who I got it from, and I'm like, "Dude, like, I got to tell you what happened." And I told him, and he's like, because I followed it up with, "You got more? I want more." And he's like, "Dude, there's something wrong with you. Like, that's not normal." I go,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, it is. Like, that's how good it was. So bring some back over." Right. And you can relate to that, but like, those
Very
are the
much so.
moments, right? And then, but my divine intervention, I shared that on a podcast, or sharing my story today, was my last relapse. And then having the director of the facility where I was at, right, at the sober living treatment center, pop in on a Sunday, who never showed up on a Sunday, right? And then sees me, and she's like, "How you doing?" Like, she didn't know. And I'm like, because the house manager had just told me in the office now, like, I knew I had the test. They were going to have to report me to my probation officer, and I'm going to prison.
Right.
She hugs me and says, after I tell her I did it again, her name was Sue, and she's like, gives me a big bear hug and goes, "Get out of here," right? And come back in 3 days and test clean, and I'll handle Steve, and you just stay sober for the next 3 days. Came back, and I've been sober ever since, right? 21 years ago. But I like these stories when I hear, these moments where we go, we get that fork in, like, the literal fork in the road, right? I can continue on, as we know, on that path, right, to the bitter end, right? Or I can ask for help. And, and this is not a plug, everybody, for 12-step meetings, all right? But they work for me, they work for Jason. But that was our help. accepting the spiritual help that came along with doing the work and staying sober, right? How was that when you first, because like you, when I first went to meetings, I could tell you, Jason, I sounded good. I could tell
Sure.
you paragraphs in the book. I could remember, hey, page so and so, first paragraph, read it. That's, and then totally read it back to everybody, right? And I sounded good, but in reality, I was just trying to look good to get everybody off my back. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Like, how was
Yeah.
that experience for you when you finally said, because now that I've been sober for 21 years and I still go to meetings and I love the big book, right? But if you asked me to find something, I'd have to go, well, hold on, Jason, let me get my book. I think God did that on purpose,
All right.
right? So I would actually, if somebody was asking me, I would have to look in the book and go, it's at this page and go read this. Or how was that experience for you once you made that decision, like 4 years ago, enough is enough, I'm done. Like, I got to do this the right way.
I got fortunate in that I had a friend that was made through when I was working in radio, and he works with big rock and metal bands, and he had long-term recovery, and he's one of the first people that I reached out to and said, "Man, I'm just hurting," and he was like the Gestapo of recovery that I needed. I mean, he was on me hard. It was like, hey, I'm a really busy guy. I'm going to give you my time, and it's very valuable. Don't mess around. Don't waste my time. And he's one of those people. He's got a good recall of stuff, but he's the same. He would have to go in the book, he would paraphrase or whatever. But man, we were just like through the steps. The first two sponsors I had, I never completed the steps with. I was through the steps with him, and I think it was like 3 weeks.
Wow.
It was no messing around. It was every night. It was like 2 hours given to me, and I was like, "You're just gonna do this because you need the way your brain works. I need your attention. I'm gonna lose it real quick unless we get through this." And we did, and of course it was early, COVID's a lockdown, so a lot of stuff via Zoom, but that was an advantage for me. Where I'm at, there's not a meeting every hour somewhere
Right.
of any kind. Now I mostly go to celebrate recovery. I like it. That's where my faith is. I don't push it on anyone, but I needed that. I could hit a meeting 24 hours a day. I was doing meetings with groups in Upper New York, Florida, Georgia, Texas. I think there was one that was from Times, Tennessee. There was one that I did that a friend of mine from LA got me in, that there was guys all over the country, and they were invited. I needed that for that period of time,
Right.
even if it was short lived. To eventually, it was like, okay, now you got to fit some life into your recovery. Let's get focused on it. The hardest part was that I was doing a podcast that we talked a lot about mental health and addiction stuff, of not just immediately coming right out. I gave myself a good year to talk about that before
Right.
that occurrence had happened. So that was kind of some of the, there was a lot of things that weighed on my heart, that's for sure. But I realized, use that anonymity, be a part of this group, stay in the middle of the herd, get to know people that have what you want. And that's not nefarious, that's not, oh, Max has 21 years, but what that he's made, or done whatever. No, it's the wisdom that you have, and that seeking of it as what you give away freely.
Right.
So I really had to embrace that A, I wasn't a burden. B, there was no more acting. I don't get to act. I don't get to get up there and go, things are great, and put the smile on and try to do this thing so that people feel good. Like, no, people wanted to genuinely know what I was going through.
Yeah.
And it's still the case. That's always my argument for 12 steps. It may not be where you stay, but it's a worthy endeavor to get in there. And I, most of all, sounds like you, I love people. I like being around people. I like I like just sharing humanity with people. That's good times, bad times, everything in between. I needed that. And I needed a group that was completely different, and alcohol wasn't a thing. Wasn't a thing at all. And now I'm fortunate the friendships that did remain. I'm not bothered by people that drink now. I most certainly won't be around people that use drugs anymore. That was never, I experimented quite a bit, but it was never my hook. Like blow, one time I was paranoid first time, and people like first time. Oh yeah, first time. It was probably a lot. I didn't sleep for like a day and a half. Not too many other powders, pills, things that were prescription wise. I was fortunate that things like Vicodin and all that stuff. I got sick the first time. Is like, oh, it takes me 20 drinks to get sick like that. So forget this stuff.
Right.
So I got pretty lucked out there. Weed wasn't really, I mean, it, I would say it wasn't a problem per se, but I did have a bottom with it of an occurrence of someone that we've been friends all of our lives. And I got a little out of line, thinking I was funny. And it
Right.
was like, oh, that's enough to, stop that. That went out before the booze did. So, um, yeah, just, it was it was it was really strange, because I had never had anything that I'd read, and I am talking about the big book where when it said, apply these things, and if you really do it, watch how your life changes. And the moment I started to realize, whoa, like this is different. Like the first time I set a really good boundary, which was literally telling someone, I care about you, but I'm not going to be in your life anymore.
Right.
It was another spiritual awakening. So yeah, sorry, I've kind of rambled there a
No,
bit,
not
but
at
I'm
all. But I
reflecting
love
on.
that, right? Because that
Yeah.
big book has a lot of wisdom. You're right. Because then we know it came from the big book, right?
Hmm.
Everybody, I like when I had mentors tell me, look, 12 steps have been around for thousands of years, right? It was just built, they didn't make them up, right? But Bill W. and Dr. Bob put it in a manner that we could understand it and put it right. Because what hooked me, like you, in that book, when I read that it said these steps, these principles are good for even people who call themselves normal. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Right. And like you said, I have so many wonderful um friends and people to this day, in 21 years. Like I've moved from my where I grew up, like in Orange County, right? And well, I went and got sober. We were lucky because in Orange County in California, there's about 1,200 to 1,500 meetings a week, right?
Hmm.
So you have a smorgasbord, right? And I'm talking AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery, Smart, everything, right? But AA alone has 12 to 1,500 meetings a week. So when I got sober the last time for the final time, I went to 2 meetings a day, 7 days a week, 3 years in a row, just because I knew that's what I needed, right? Because my brain, when I get bored, likes to go, oh, that's a good idea, right? Or I knew if I
Uh-huh.
didn't stay busy and that guilt and shame kicked in, guess what I'm going to do again, right?
Yeah.
And but I love your story, right? Because right, and like Jason and I will probably agree, like we're not pushing anything, but when you're going through this, if you're seeking help, don't do it alone, right? Like there's
Mhm.
something about community. And I don't know if you've ever seen this, and I've said it up before. I watch this podcast, right? And I use it as a group sometimes when I'm facilitating a group, but it's this British journalist who did a TED Talks, and it's called "What We Think About Addiction Is All Wrong," I believe.
Mm.
By Johan Hari. You got it. It's like
Yeah.
16 minutes long, right?
Yeah. I know Johan. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the ending when he asked the crowd, like, what do you think the opposite of addiction is, right? And they're all going sobriety, recovery. And he's like, no, it's connection,
Yeah.
right? Because you and I know when I finally connected with people on a human level without the substances, and they truly cared about me and wanted me to be sober because they loved me and they related and didn't want anything in return. That's when it turned for me, when I was like, these people truly do care, right? Like I
Yeah.
can't do this alone, because left to, as they say, to my own devices, I'm at the bar again, or I'm at the store, right? And even my
Yeah.
wife, like nowadays, not so much nowadays, but like I remember, like we'd go to the store, right? And you go through the alcohol aisle, right? And for me, like when, especially in my later years, like I'm seeing stuff, I go, I've never seen this before. And I'm thinking to myself, how come they didn't have this when I was drinking? I would have tried this. Right.
All right.
And I'm not reminiscing, but my wife would grab me and go, hey, keep it moving. You don't need to be in this aisle. You know, she's just watching out for me. But it's funny, like our brains are what our addicted brains do to us, and what our brains like once we realize that without substances, we're worth so much more. Right. And
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And how, you know, like I've been having this talk with people about successful people, right? And sometimes even the most successful people are not always happy, right?
No,
Because
some
they're
of the most
always
miserable I've met, to be
right,
honest.
right. And but I've also met very successful people that are very happy, right? Because what they've
Yeah.
taught me is they're not focused, excuse me, on the end result, but that process of going through something and learning and right, like our recovery, right? Like I tell clients that I work with or sponsees, hey, trust the process, right?
Yeah.
You're
I
gonna
do. I do as well. And the best way I put it that I've kind of really started to utilize. Who was it that said it? I think it was a conversation that David Goggins had with Andrew Huberman. If people are familiar with either of those, and he was talking about the delusion of the dangling carrot, and that there is no dangling carrot. There's just the stick. And
right,
it's the representation, right? The dangling carrot, you get the donkey to walk to where you want to go. Well, it's the delusion that eventually it's going to get to eat that. There isn't. There really isn't. Like, yeah, enjoy this because we don't
right,
know.
right,
Like I think of Viktor Frankl, where he's talking about being in a concentration camp, and that acceptance of this might be the best it gets before this ends for me. And I don't mean that in a doom and gloomer to bring people down, but no, think about it, like enjoy that process, enjoy the walk,
yeah,
enjoy the fact that there is no carrot. I've seen people chase money, they get it, and they're still empty. Or us, it was the chasing it was always funner to get drunk than be drunk. It was always funner to get high than be high.
right,
You know, it's like no, because we don't know what's going to be that destination anyways. So
right,
quit chasing the carrot. It's like if you want to do something, do obviously make empowering decisions over disempowering ones, but just
yeah,
man, just accept the stick is there. There is no dangling carrot.
right,
It's kind of like too, a married man, like I found somebody great, like all problems go away. No, there's a whole new set of problems. They're
right,
all manageable, not a
right,
single one.
right,
I was on the verge of bankruptcy, to share. No, I've been divorced 10 years ago now. And started doing the work on that 7 years ago. Now I have an over 800 credit score because I set out, formed a plan, just the same as I did with my recovery when I started to take it serious. And it's like all this stuff is manageable. There's not
absolutely,
anything I can think. I've lost loved ones, some of them to addiction, guys that I would go to meetings with, especially with fentanyl out there now. I could
oh
think of
man,
3 young men and what I do with the work at Paying Parents and Addicts in Need and the families that have lost, and then just the reality, it's all manageable. It's all manageable. And like if you want to achieve certain things, like it's out there, but just know that when you get there, like, you got the house you wanted. Well, guess what? There's a whole new set of problems that come with it, and embrace that too.
absolutely, right. Like David Goggins says, right, embrace being comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And you and I know that guy's on a different level though when it comes to the way he does things, right?
He's bananas. He's
But
nuts. Yeah.
but I love that guy, right? You know what I mean? Like who tortures themselves just to prove a point, right? Like, and there's a lot of guys besides Goggins. There's another SEAL I know that does those freaking ultra marathons, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I always tease, right? And my audience probably getting sick of it. But when I first learned about Goggins and I read his book, right? And so I followed him on Instagram and I sent him a message. I go, he probably won't get it because he has what, hundreds of thousands of followers, right? But I go, look, I'm going to send this guy a message, right? So and I said, look, I work as a substance abuse counselor. I go, I love your book. I read your book. I love what you're doing. And I said, but the running thing, I said, look, man, I go, I will give you free counseling pro bono if you ever need it, Mr. Goggins, because your running that's like insane. Like I loved football when we did sprints, right? Because I knew it was gonna be over. The faster I ran, the quicker it was gonna be over. But you tell me to go run 5 miles, I'm like, Jason, I don't know if you relapse or something, but that ain't happening because you're out of your mind, right? But I would tease people like that are runner that love. They say, yeah, but you get runner's high. I go, well, that's one high I will never chase. Trust me.
Uh-huh.
I like being in shape and being physically fit, but like you're not going to give me right. But anyway, this has been an awesome time with you, Jason, and I love hearing your story and how you've overcome the things you've went through, right? And I love how you share with the audience, right, without promoting anything, that how you found community and built your recovery around that, and now you get to do amazing things, right? So I'm going to ask you some of the questions I like, right, that I love to ask, and that's fearless, as you can see behind me. Fearless. What does fearless mean to you today, and how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
I've never been asked that. Fearless. I think a part of that, being fearless, also comes with knowing your limits. And the biggest thing I always faced was that rejection. And so for me, fearless is the ability now to say no. With some of the work that I'm doing with multimedia production, I've had so many people, oh, hey, this, and I'm just like, this is my price. Well, that's pretty high. Will you come down? No, you might want to ask somebody else. To me, that's a fearless thing to have to do.
Yeah.
Being
I was going to
vulnerable.
ask you after the show. What? No, I'm just kidding.
Vulnerability is another big part of being fearless. I mean, like you said, I'm like you. I'm not going to go run the 50 miles. It's not going to happen. It's not that I'm afraid of it. It's just I embrace a different type of discomfort. That's not it.
Right. Exactly.
You want to? I challenge you to do 500 sit-ups in a day. Okay, I'll work up to that. The 50 miles and swimming through shark-infested waters, no, it ain't gonna happen. To me, it's a stupidity. So for me, fearless, I guess, is really looking at my own flaws and character defects and how I continue to confront those on a daily basis.
I love it. Right. Taking a look. Well, yeah, that to me, that's just like program is ingrained in you, right? Like we always, at the end of the day, I try to do that, right? But I love, right? And some people will get what I'm saying. You'll get what I'm saying. But like that 10 step, everybody thinks it's like red ink, right? But I like where in the 12 and 12, it says it's not all in red ink, right? We got to not only admit where we were wrong, make wrongs right away, but also like give yourself a little pat on the back. Where were you helpful? Right? Did you do good during the day? And right, it's a checks and balances. So because as well as I do, if you're telling me, and I'm even telling myself I'm doing wrong, right, that's gonna implant in my brain, and it's gonna give me a reason to go, well, I'm not good enough again. So I guess I know it helps that, right?
Yep.
So thank you for sharing your fearless. So the next question, knowing I put a Y in it, what does happiness mean to you? And how does that show up in your life on a daily basis?
Man. First, for me, I have to make that distinction between joy and happiness. And this is for me, because like hearing my kids laugh, my lady, seeing her smile, I get, I can embrace those things now, like a real, there's happiness in it. There's happiness in the exploration of life. The things that I find joy in. Like I'm more curious now as a middle-aged man, much closer to 50 than I am 40. Like what's fascinating to me? What's interesting? And I get a lot of moments of happiness through that. The pushing through something that's frustrating, I get happiness. Like I still have a very stubborn mind, and at times it's not so good, and at other times it's a wonderful thing. Like, oh, I need to know how to do that, and pushing through it and being willing to make the mistakes and being like, wow, I was pretty happy in messing that up. you know? Um, so, uh, yeah, it's kind of those beautiful moments that I think we need to embrace, or at least for me, daily. Like, I'm even happy. I had a friend call the other day, really struggling, going through very similar things that I did, and him going, "I'm sorry to bother you." And I went, "No, man, I'm happy you called."
Right.
I think that's a good example of it. Being able to be of service to someone else. That's definitely a happiness. And when I can make myself go, accept joy and positivity in good stuff and the things that I earned, that puts a big happy smile on my face.
Yep. Love it. You can't go wrong with service work. You know what I mean? Or helping somebody. I mean, all the greats in the world talk about helping others, and even personal development gurus. That I think it was Zig Ziglar who says, "You want to get what you want, help enough people get what they want, and you'll get what you want." Right? And
Hmm.
we find that in recovery. Right? If I help enough people show them how I got sober, I get to stay sober another day. Right? And that goes for what I do for work, and for fun and for free, as they say. And we it's just a beautiful thing, and I appreciate that. And like I said, this is like been an amazing time. So if my audience wants to get a hold of you, Jason, to ask, work with you or find out what you do or support you, or right, because I heard what is it, parents and addicts in need, right?
Yep, yep,
Somebody
yep.
wants to reach out and say have a loved one that needs your services, or how do they get a hold of you?
Easiest way, probably, I'm finding most of it's through Instagram, which is pretty simple. It's at No Outside Solutions. It's kind of the work that I do when I coach. It's No Outside Solutions to Inside Problems is the moniker I work with.
I love it.
Really trying to help people, especially early or stagnant in their recovery, come into a greater consciousness of self. So that's an easy way, or simply Jason at painnonprofit.org, and you email me there. And hey, you need a conversation or some help, or maybe you missed Max's email somehow and you want to talk with him, I can connect you to that too. I've got all of his contacts. So those are the best ways. Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me.
All right. I love it, man. This has been one amazing time, Jason. I loved, we could probably go for hours just talking about, right? We could talk hours for what it was like, and we could talk about what happened for hours, and we could talk about what it's like today. And you know what I mean? Because the connection is, that's why I stay sober. The connections I get to build, right? Whether it's through my podcast or in person or on the phone, or just, and then letting people share their stories. But that actually brings joy in my life. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. But you're not quite off the hook just yet. I
All
have
right.
one last question. It's my favorite question of all my guests. And it goes like this: what is the one piece of advice you could give my audience to help them grow as human beings and become better people?
Dang.
I love it.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I'm not, if people have figured, I'm not, although I do speak at things publicly, but I'm not Mr. Captain Polished here.
Well, don't worry. I'm
That,
not either, bud.
that you're not broken. You came into this world a whole and complete being with everything that you needed to have a prosperous life. Um, I would encourage curiosity in what that is. It's not going to be disempowering decisions, and it's not going to be validation from other people, although we need it in certain situations. I'm not taking that away. You're married, I am. We need our partner to confirm we're still being a good partner. So
Right.
I'm not saying all validate, but don't seek it. Find what that inner joy is, that happiness, that service to others. It may not be how Max and I do. At the end of the day, the quickest thing to get you out of your own way is helping others in need. And the funny thing is, everyone's in need of something. Everyone.
Right.
I don't care how poor, how rich financially you are, everybody has a need of some kind, and sometimes that's as simple as a nice smile or a hello, a hole in the door, or whatever it is. So yeah, and that's really where a lot of my that saying that I have, that little copyright there, no outside solutions to inside problems, is, most of the issues we face, they're right between our ears.
Right, that's 6 inches, right?
Yep, and I'm very creative, and I can create a lot of delusions that lead to a lot of problems that never existed. So
all right, awesome, Jason, thank you so much, man. Like I said, what an awesome time I had with you today. So thank you for being here. So you heard him, everybody. If Jason made you think, if Jason taught you something, if he made you smile, and my famous, if Jason made you go, I like that, please go to iTunes and leave a 5-star review so more people can find the podcast. So again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world. This is Max from the Fearless Happiness Podcast. Until next time.
Are you tired of being weighed down by life's traumas and struggles? Join the Fearless Happiness lifestyle and let us guide you toward a brighter future. Explore our past podcast episodes and get a copy of the Fearless Happiness book to ignite your inner strength. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or facing challenges related to unresolved trauma, know that we are here for you. Visit maxnijst.org, maxnijst.org, and take the first steps toward finding your fearless happiness. Thank you for listening. This has been a production of Fearless Happiness.